It's time for the news from TSN in the United Marathon. Today, the 1+1 channel team is working with you. Almost half of the residential buildings in Shostka, Sumy region already have gas, according to the military administration. Gas connections are ongoing. Let me remind you, over the past few days, the enemy has been striking critical infrastructure. Due to damage to the gas distribution station, water supply and energy facilities, thousands of residents of the city and district were left without electricity, water and gas. And on Sunday, the enemy struck the railway station and trains, resulting in 1 person killed and 8 passengers hospitalized. Currently, institutions in Shostka are operating on generators, water is supplied according to a schedule, and bread is being delivered from Sumy and Lviv. The community has organized free meals for children and set up more than 100 resilience points. Some railway services and routes have been changed according to the security situation. Emergency gas and power crews are working around the clock. Specialists from other regions have also been involved in eliminating the consequences of the attacks. Due to Russian strikes, there are power outages again in the Chernihiv region. Explosions were heard in the regional center during the day. The Russians are attacking critical infrastructure, and in the morning, an energy facility in the Vishniansky district came under enemy fire. The region is operating on scheduled hourly power outages, and restoration work is being complicated by repeated Russian attacks. Russian terrorists attacked a maternity hospital in Sumy. At the time of the attack, there were 11 newborns, 35 patients, and 120 staff members in the facility. Fortunately, everyone managed to get to the shelter in time. A 60-year-old employee suffered an acute stress reaction. She was given assistance on the spot by an enemy drone. Preliminary reports indicate that it was a Shahed drone that struck the hospital roof. A fire broke out, which rescuers quickly extinguished. The building's roof was damaged and windows were shattered. Volunteers arrived at the scene. They are already patching up the roof to protect the hospital from the rain. The regional military administration showed how the drone deliberately struck the maternity ward. There's a threat of another drone strike. This is hindering the work of the state emergency service, ambulance and police personnel. Please move away from the exits and, if possible, stay in safe places. Mobile shelters will start being installed in Kyiv. The mayor announced this today. They are already in place in Odessa, Kherson and Dnipro. However, there were previously no clear requirements for such shelters at the state level, and their installation and procurement were accompanied by dozens of criminal investigations. Mobile shelters will primarily be installed in places where it is not possible to set up permanent bomb shelters. And there are quite a few such places in the capital, particularly along the routes of surface public transport. In recent years, the capital has allocated over 7 billion hryvnias for the arrangement of bomb shelters. Almost 2,000 shelters have been renovated. At the same time, there are still not enough of them in various districts of the city, especially in areas where the distance to metro stations is great. People are bringing flowers, candles, and children's toys to the ruins of a house in the village of Lapaivka near Lviv. The day before, the Russians turned a home into a pile of bricks and took 4 lives. Among the dead was 10th grader Nastya. She had just turned 15 at the end of August. Her mother and her parents died with her. Her stepfather, he survived. He is in intensive care. In total, 6 people were injured in the region during the massive drone and missile attack. The father of the 15-year-old girl who died, who serves in the armed forces of Ukraine, came from the front as soon as he learned about the tragedy. We were still texting in the evening. She asked how I was. I replied that everything was okay. When you texted, you said you were okay too. And in the morning, such news came.
We paid our respects. It's such a pity. The whole family died. The girl was young. She studied at our school. It's such a pity.
The noise was terrible. I mean, I've never heard anything louder in my life. And we all survived. I mean, there were still people in the house today. 3 displaced people, my mom and me. And there was also a guest in the house. She endured torture and abuse for the sake of her children. Svitlana Golovan spent 6 years in Russian captivity. On charges of espionage, the occupation authorities in Donetsk arrested the single mother in front of her 2 little daughters and sentenced her to 10 years in prison. Svitlana was only able to be freed this August, and the very first thing the ombudsman did for her was arrange a meeting with her children and a shared vacation. Between games and walks, the family also found time for an honest conversation with a TSN correspondent. Hello, Yupas.
She had been waiting for these hugs for 6 years. Anya was 11 and Sofia was 5 when, on an August day 6 years ago, their home in Novozovsk was raided. Svitlana Golovan, a private entrepreneur who specialized in salting and smoking Azov fish, was accused of collaborating with the armed forces of Ukraine. all because her sister's husband serves there. Anya ran after my car crying, "Let my mom go." She understood that her mom had just been there and that something was happening. Until the very end, the woman says she thought it was a cruel prank even when they put a bag over her head and took her to Donetsk. They said I was going to talk to an investigator, but in reality, they started interrogating me, beating me, putting a bag over my head, and suffocating me. They tied my hands and lifted them up. My first thoughts were, it was right before September 1st. How would my Anya go to school? Who would get her ready? Who would dress her? I didn't care what would happen to me next. 5 months of torture in a basement and another 8 in prison. Svitlana was forced to confess to something she hadn't done. They threw me into a cell 1.5 meters by 1 meter, and I thought I was going crazy because I kept hearing my daughter Anya's voice. "Do you hear that?" And it seemed to me that something had happened to the children. It was so... I grabbed onto the bars and screamed, asking what was happening to my children. There were witnesses from her close circle who allegedly confirmed Svitlana's supposed espionage activities. The occupation court sentenced her to 10 years. But the worst part was that the Russians threatened to send her daughters to an orphanage. By some miracle, relatives managed to get them to Mariupol, which was still under Ukrainian control at the time, and then on to Germany.
Something had to be done, so Mom made the decision. Mom did everything by herself, everywhere, always.
And I tried to become just as strong.
I don't know if I succeeded or not.
Svitlana insists that while in captivity, they never doubted for a moment that Ukraine was fighting for her. And that gave her the strength to hold on.
The problem is that the most difficult category to bring back is actually civilian hostages. There is no international mechanism. We can't use exchange processes because civilians can't be swapped for civilians. According to international humanitarian law, this is stipulated exclusively for prisoners of war.
However, after 6 years, Svitlana was finally freed. When we entered Ukraine, and in every village there were people, children, elderly people with flags greeting us, waving at us. It was very... well, I had tears of joy the whole way. It was the ombudsman who helped the woman reunite with her children as quickly as possible. I was worried that I would cry too much, that when I hugged them, I might scare them with my tears. There was fear. They remembered me as one person. 6 years have passed. I have changed. After captivity, Svitlana faces a long rehabilitation in the hospital. But before that, she asked to spend some time with her children. All the conditions for such reunions are provided by Bukovel.
Not every qualified psychologist is truly able to effectively work with individuals who have unfortunately gone through the horrific experiences of Russian captivity and the brutal realities of Russian torture. Therefore, knowing that, firstly, the highly dedicated and experienced team working diligently there in Bukovel possesses truly tremendous and invaluable experience, and secondly, knowing the very large number of people who have already successfully undergone comprehensive rehabilitation there and have consistently given overwhelmingly positive feedback, we collectively made the crucial decision, and I'll be completely honest, I personally reached out directly to the senior management of this exceptional facility to ensure everything was in order.
Now they are trying not to make up for what was lost during 6 years of captivity. And while the older Anya plans to return to Germany to study there, Sofia wants only one thing: to move from Germany to Ukraine and live with her mother. A La Paz, Serhiy Osadchuk, Roman Duchek, Prikarpatia, TSN, 1+, Marathon, United News.
To frighten Europe with war, Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, stated that this is the goal of drone attacks on Western countries. He did not directly admit Moscow's responsibility, but said that the main thing, I quote, is for the short-sighted Europeans to feel for themselves what the threat of war is. Meanwhile, this morning, drone activity caused the suspension of operations at Oslo Airport in Norway. According to local media reports, several planes were circling in the air until the drone situation was resolved. In the end, it was not necessary to divert flights to other airports. The presence of drones at the airport was reported by one of the pilots. He noticed between 3 and 5 objects. An investigation is currently underway. In recent weeks, European airports have been experiencing chaos related to the appearance of unidentified drones. The Chancellor of Germany, whose country was among those affected by the attack, stated directly that Russia is behind the launches. In terms of the frequency of airspace intrusions, Merz says the situation is worse than during the Cold War. However, none of the detected drones were combat drones. They were conducting reconnaissance. The German authorities are changing legislation to counter drones. A special laser installation has been set up at Munich Airport, which will detect and shoot down drones. The Netherlands will help Ukraine produce more Ukrainian weapons, including drones. They will assist both financially and through joint production. The increase in military potential was discussed by Volodymyr Zelensky and the Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof, who arrived in Kyiv today on an official visit. F-16 fighter jets and military aid to Ukraine totaling €9 billion have significantly complicated the Russian aggressors' advance on the battlefield. However, Russian drones are already flying over Europe, and the Netherlands is ready to learn from this experience. Ukrainian soldiers are repelling Russian air attacks, stated the Dutch Prime Minister. However, Russians must feel the inevitability of punishment for their aggression, which is why Ukraine is increasing attacks on Russian territory not only with long-range drones, stated the Ukrainian president. Volodymyr Zelensky did not disclose details about the use of Ukrainian long-range missiles, including the new ones, Flamingo, but emphasized that Ukrainian weapons could be more effective with proper funding. In recent days, Ukraine has been consistently using exclusively Ukrainian-made products, not just drones, but a variety of domestically produced items. And judging by those significant and impactful hits, I think people can quite easily tell from the numerous fragments and pieces of evidence readily available on various social media platforms where these drones were specifically used and where something entirely other than drones was employed in these operations. And I would like to thank not only the soldiers for this, but also the manufacturers who have taken the necessary steps. We are expecting greater capabilities, but they depend on financial resources. So we can clearly see that Russia is not limiting itself to Ukraine and is trying to attack European countries. For now, it's with drones. This is already not just a war of Russia against Ukraine. We have to support each other. Ukraine has provided assistance to the anti-drone program. And your experience and knowledge? They are very valuable. This is too much even for Merkel. In Estonia, the latest statements by the former German Chancellor regarding Russia's war against Ukraine have been criticized. The head of the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Affairs, Marko Mikkelsen, stated that this is a new and unfortunately very low point for Angela Merkel regarding her accusations against the Baltic states and Poland of provoking Russia's imperial war. The official said that this casts a shadow over Merkel's entire period in office. As Chancellor of Germany, not to mention the Nord Stream issue, Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna stated that there is only one reason for Russia's war against Ukraine. It is Moscow's refusal literally to accept the collapse of the Soviet Union and its unrelenting imperial ambitions. The reason for the outrage in Tallinn was Merkel's latest interview with the mountain publication Partisan. The former chancellor stated that Putin's decision to attack Ukraine was allegedly influenced by COVID-19 because there was little communication with the Kremlin leader due to the pandemic. The politician also hinted that the position of Poland and the Baltic countries prevented direct negotiations with the Russian leader. She claimed that at the end of her term she wanted to create an EU alternative to the Minsk format, but some member states opposed it. Now Merkel believes that, I quote, times have changed, and now we need to see how we can best prepare for peace by demonstrating real deterrence while also supporting Ukraine. $36,000 to be removed from military registration. The police detained an official from one of the state agencies immediately after receiving a bribe. He had promised a conscript to resolve the issue in a certain way so that he would be removed from military registration. Notably, in such cases before, the bribe amounts were 10 times smaller. The civil servant assured the conscript that the money needed to be handed over to an official at one of the capital's recruitment centers.
According to the charges brought against the man, he faces up to 10 years in prison, with the additional penalty of being barred from holding certain positions or engaging in certain activities for up to 3 years, along with confiscation of property.
Russian troops have advanced near 4 settlements in Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions. This was reported by the analytical portal Deep State. This refers to the villages of Novoivanivka, Olhivske, Vishneve and Ternove. These directions are part of an active front line where the Russians are trying to secure control over logistically important routes, analysts explain. The Novopavlivka and Pokrovsk directions remain the most difficult. Just there, in the past 24 hours alone, the enemy attacked nearly 100 times. In total, there were 231 engagements recorded along the front line, according to the General Staff. In particular, the occupiers tried 17 times to break through our defenses in the Turkish sector. And although the enemy's goal in these assaults is to seize at least a few meters of Ukrainian land, the defense forces are doing their utmost to hold their positions. According to the General Staff, our soldiers successfully struck 3 areas where Russian troops and equipment were concentrated.